approaching 2:30 p.m. on May 7th, 1915. The massive British luxury liner Lusitania is in her death knell. Only minutes earlier, she was hit by a single torpedo, and now the ship is clearly doomed as her bow is swallowed by the Irish Sea. From a small cabin up top on the boat deck, two young men burst out as the deck sagged beneath their feet. They are the two wireless operators, and the younger, McCormick, pauses to look at the chaotic spectacle in front of him and reaches into his pocket to take something out. Passengers nearby are surprised to see that it's a small pocket camera. He snaps some shots, but moments later Lusitania is lost beneath the waves. McCormick is thrown into the ocean and his camera is immersed. The roll of film destroyed. But were his photographs totally lost? Careful scrutiny of what remains of the film can reveal some startling scenes. Today, we'll examine this badly damaged piece of film to reveal its secrets. We'll look at passenger sketches and drawings to try to show Lusitania's sinking as it looked to those that were there. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your friend Mike Brady from Ocean Liner Designs, and this is the story of the drawings and lost photographs of Lusitania's sinking. This cinema film was shot from Pier 54 in New York, Cunard's main terminal and destination in the United States. For decades, this film has been shown in documentaries and films hailed as the last footage ever shot of Lusitania when she departed New York for the 101st and final time on May 1st, 1915. Many came to doubt that this was the real deal, that this was really footage from another departure, not the ultimate one. But recent efforts to identify passengers and crew standing on the decks seems to indicate that it is in fact legitimate. We know the press were there that day covering Lusitania's departure because it was doing so under a cloud of ominous concern. The German embassy famously ran an ad warning passengers against travelling on the ship because of the ongoing war, and pressmen arrived on the day to interview Lusitania's captain. It's not inconceivable that a team showed up with a film camera as well. But this isn't actually the last photographic depiction of Lusitania that exists. In fact, as the ship sank, a quick-witted crew member pulled out his camera and snapped some pictures. And now all that remains is this sea-damaged, garbled mess. But is this damaged strip of film really incomprehensible? Or is there more to it than meets the eye? To answer this question, we have to travel back in time to the early years of the personal camera. By 1915, small personal cameras had become relatively popular and fairly widespread. Once upon a time, to be a photographer meant lugging around huge glass plate cameras on their tripods, but the handy portable camera, first the Kodak Brownie in 1900, and then later folding cameras like the Kodak Vest Pocket, changed everything. And with their introduction, anybody could easily carry one and catch snapshots of friends, family, and places. When Lusitania set out that May 1915 bound for Liverpool, there must have been dozens of cameras on board, and one was snug in the pocket of assistant wireless operator David McCormick. McCormick was a Scot from Glasgow, and at only 20 years of age, he was aboard to serve as junior to his senior wireless operator Robert Leith. The pair had a much easier job of it than usual because voyages in wartime were a very weird thing. Lusitania was boldly ignoring the German U-boat threat, sailing at speed and in zigzags to avoid enemy attack, and maintaining a remarkably consistent, fairly reliable schedule through a war zone. The wireless men sent almost no messages at all. That would give away their position. Instead, they listened and wrote down only what messages they received. The shifts must have been long and boring. There were no jaunty passenger messages or greetings to tap out. McCormick was out and about in the afternoon on May 7th. It was a beautiful day, and the sun shone brilliantly. Lusitania was making her way through the ocean, albeit slower than many might have expected. McCormick took out his camera and snapped two photographs at around 1:30 p.m. The first shows Lusitania's boat deck. Up on top of the ship, this is where her lifeboats were located, but because she was in hostile water, her boats were already swung out, in readiness just in case of an attack. They could be quickly lowered. McCormick headed below and snapped his second picture in the promenade deck. Here, passengers walked lazily and took in the sights. They were only a day away from a safe arrival. It seemed as if Lusitania had outrun trouble again. But just a half hour after these pictures were taken, the ship and its passengers would be in a fight for their very lives because, unbeknownst to them, they had been detected by the German submarine U-20, which, as McCormick took his pictures, was already manoeuvring into a suitable firing position. At 2:10 p.m, a single torpedo roared through the sea and struck Lusitania on her starboard side near the bridge. The impact was devastating. Throughout the ship, it sent people absolutely sprawling. McCormick was up in the wireless room with Leith when the torpedo hit, and the pair immediately knew what had happened. Without being asked, they got to work on sending out a distress call. On deck, graphic and industrial designer Oliver Percy Bernard was strolling when in front of him, the ship had erupted in a whoosh of sea spray and smoke. He later drew this sketch, his recollections of the sight. Debris and spray soared high into the air to rain back down onto the decks. The ship immediately began to roll heavily onto her starboard right-hand side, and Bernard and the rest of the ship's 1,200-odd passengers and crew were now in a race against time to evacuate from the stricken ship. Over the course of 18 minutes, Lusitania rapidly succumbed to the ocean. It was a frantic, chaotic affair. Men, women and children flocked to the boats while the ship listed sharply beneath their feet. Lifeboats were launched too hastily. They overturned and sent their complement tumbling into the sea. It was an absolute mess. But the whole while, the two wireless men did their work. When Lusitania's power finally failed, they fired up the emergency generator so they could continue to send a distress call. But finally, they were forced to abandon their post, and it was here, at this late stage in the sinking, that McCormick emerged from the wireless office and was amazed by what he saw. He pulled out his camera and got to work. Henry Burgess, a first-class passenger, was near the wireless room when Leith and McCormick came out. He said, "I went over to the starboard side and saw that now the water was nearly up to the level of the boat deck. The Marconi man came out of his office at that time and began to take photographs, which struck me as a cool proceeding. As McCormick took his pictures, he said in some awe, 'What a snap this will make.' It might not look like much now, but this is what remains of McCormick's roll of film. These are the remnants of the pictures he took that day. Badly damaged because just a few minutes after he took them, McCormick was in the water as the Lusitania sank. The roll of film was developed, and the first two pictures, the ones of the promenade and the boat deck, came out with only minor damage. But the rest of the roll was deemed lost, except that careful scrutiny of the contents might reveal some hidden secrets. Oceanliner Design's own researcher and 3D modeler, Liam Sharp, has recently reviewed this film and noticed some interesting things. For starters, on this part of the film, you might be able to just make out what looks like people's faces. Perhaps a crowd as they jostled to get into a lifeboat. It takes some squinting, but you can definitely see facial features hidden in there. Well, this is part of the reel that's probably the most damaged, and it seems illegible at first, but McCormick said later on that he had photographed an overturned lifeboat with people clinging onto it. Is this the outline of that overturned boat? The dark figures on top, a mass of people holding on for dear life? It's all very hard to make out, but probably the most convincing part of the film is this. Now again, it doesn't look like much, but this round object on the bottom right, well, it's almost unmistakable. It looks just like one of Lusitania's distinctive drum-type ventilators that lined the deck houses beneath the ship's funnels. Is this the infamous photo that Henry Burgess saw McCormick take outside the wireless room looking forward as the ship's bow sank? If so, then the images, which were thought long lost, although badly damaged, have actually been hiding in plain sight for almost 110 years. Once McCormick was in the sea, the Lusitania took a plunge downward. Her bow collided heavily with the sea floor below, so the ship's stern began to drop like a stone, instead of elegantly sliding below like other ships do along their length. Oliver Percy Bernard, the designer, later drew this compelling image. As soon as Lusitania's massive funnels reached sea level, there was a horrible side effect. They began to draw people into them, as water flooded into their empty mass. Within just a sickeningly short amount of time, Lusitania, Cunard Line's pride and joy, was gone, and a few hundred people were left behind, struggling in the water. McCormick's damaged film and Bernard's drawings are the only real visual record that remains of that terrible day. McCormick, for his part, thought his film was completely destroyed, but he must have been pleasantly surprised to find that the first two photographs had survived mostly intact. Of course, it was only his photos of the sinking that were heavily damaged. At the time, it was thought that the film was completely destroyed. But looking carefully, there are still those telltale objects that tantalizingly stand out and may just give us a small glimpse into the events of that day.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's your friend Mike Brady from Oceanliner Designs. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we get new videos out weekly. If you want to support my work and get really cool perks like behind the scenes and early access, please visit my Patreon in the link in the description below, or sign up as a YouTube member. Come and join the crew. And as always, stay safe, stay happy, and I'll see you again next time.